Welcome to episode 14 of the Civil War Breakfast Club. I am your co-host, Mary, and I am joined by the awesome Darren Week.
Wow, I don't know who this awesome Darren Weeks is, but hey.
Also known as Tattooed Diva Braggart.
Yeah, I got to be appropriate today. Got to be appropriate. You are Chattanooga. Jeez, I wonder what we're talking about. My thing says brag, and your thing says Chattanooga. I suppose we're talking about what? Monocracy?
We might be talking about the Chattanooga campaign. Notice how we didn't say the battles for Chattanooga. The Chattanooga
there's a distinction.
campaign.
There is a distinction. This is going to be, dare I say, another multi-part episode, Mary?
Yeah, probably 2, but it could possibly be 3. We're going to see how it goes.
A 3? A trilogy?
A threesome?
Well,
that would be a first for the podcast.
E.P. Alexander did fight at this battle, so I suppose.
He did, so it's possible.
Certainly did. Wow, okay. Ooh, look at you coming in hot right off the bat. Anyway, how's everything going? I haven't talked to you in a little while. So how are things going? We had a good podcast last week. We would talk about Sherman's march to the sea.
Yep, part 1 of that.
Part 1 of that, so this is very confusing.
Which that
now.
actually could become a threesome as well, as we've talked about on social media. Our 3-parters are not going to be trilogies.
No, I don't think I guess not. Wow. Anyway, so we had a lot of fun with that. A lot of people listened to that. We had a fantastic Facebook Live on Saturday.
Yep. Thanks to everybody who came out to that and was with us for a lot of people were with us for nearly 3 hours, which was awesome. We had some great discussion going on.
Our longest one, I think. And there was a lot of good talk. And I mean, we can mention we have the round table tomorrow, but it'd be by the time this drops,
the round table will have happened.
So I hope everyone enjoyed the round table on Wednesday. It was a great conversation. Thanks for everybody stopping by. Sorry what Mary said. It's embarrassing, but that's just the way it is. So, but that's always a good time. So we're always going to do that the third Wednesday of the month from 6 to 7. So we will definitely do that. Look out now, Mary. We're talking about Chattanooga. See what I did there?
Very good. But what are we drinking first?
Oh, that's right. Well, you with your priorities. Well, Canadians first.
All right, so I am drinking Hazy State from Collective Arts Brewing. And the reason I got this one was because it's got a half moon on it. And my second beer is Eclipse from Lost Craft, which also has a half moon on it. The reason I did that is because my boy OO makes an appearance tonight, but my mug is General George Henry Thomas because he also is involved tonight too.
Ooh, a double Mary General.
Yep.
I'm drinking Lucid Dreams Milkshake IPA, and it's a company out of Maine. Howard again, Maine. So
exactly, Howard.
And I'm drinking from my Abraham Lincoln mug. 2 reasons. 1, 2 days from now is the Gettysburg Address anniversary. And more importantly, I don't have a Thomas mug. So I have no choice. So that's pretty much what it is.
I wanted to drink out of a Howard mug tonight or a General Hooker mug tonight, because they're both involved in the goings on.
I gotta find a Hooker mug and a Howard mug.
You know what? I would drink out of a Braxton Bragg mug because then people would know when I was in a really fucking bad mood.
Ooh, you?
So, yeah. Bad so mood? Then therefore you would probably say I would drink out of it all the time, right?
I didn't say that. That's... That was not saying stop reading my mind.
I do have the General Mead mug.
We got a bunch of good mugs. I think we're going to have some fun with this episode tonight. God knows it's another C-word battle campaign, Chattanooga. We know how much you love. There you go. Chickamauga were up the bat a few weeks ago. This is kind of an extension of Chickamauga. This is the Union Strikes Back. If you're looking at Star Wars terms with this one, if you already want to split it down. So we're going to talk pretty much the beginning of it. We're going to lead up to it, and we're going to get to a point. We're going to stop off at a really, really good, literally a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
We have to pay attention. Listen to the end of this one.
I went into this thinking this is going to be a clusterfuck because that was what Chickamauga was. But actually, I know we were talking about this before, but some of these battles that are happening in the lead up to Lookout Mountain, I understand them a lot better than other battles in the Civil War for whatever reason. But like you and I were saying, we were originally going to do this as just talking a little bit about Lookout Mountain, but then we discovered that what we're going to talk about is like each battle that happens is leading to Lookout Mountain.
What's great about this one is you think about Chattanooga, you think about Lookout Mountain, you think of Missionary Ridge, you think of the basics, you think the fighting above the clouds, you think of all the like fantastic vista from Point Lookout overlooking the Tennessee River and the city of Chattanooga. But what people don't realize, so maybe people listening to this probably do realize, but there's so much that builds up to it, leading up to all this stuff. And again, it's a situation where the Union Army puts themselves into a corner, almost like a mini version of Vicksburg a little bit in reverse.
Yep.
And we'll get into that, but explaining how that worked out. it again explains another screw up by your boy Braxton. It does. You have to. I mean, but you know what though? This one talks about a lot of things, because this one, if you look at the beginning of this battle, a lot of people don't look good, Mary. They don't. And like the people you would think they look good, like Grant doesn't look good in this one.
No,
you know?
Grant actually, throughout this whole campaign, Grant and Sherman come out of it. Like, this is
Sherman not so much.
Yeah, this is the one campaign where I come out of it thinking, as much as I love and respect those two, they did some real dick moves to a couple people, namely Hooker and General Thomas.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. Hey, good point. We'll talk about that. Obviously, what's interesting about this, as we get into more details, is you almost have dueling dumpster fires on both sides.
Exactly.
With the generals. You've got the Union politics and the Confederate politics simultaneously swirling the bowl at the same time.
It's like two nighttime dramas. Think Dallas and
Dynasty.
Knots Landing.
Oh, I was going to go Dynasty. You got to go Dynasty there, Mary.
Well, I went Knots Landing because it's like it's the playoff of Dallas, right? Because Gary Ewing.
I don't think I know who you are anymore.
Going through the whole brother thing.
Are you dancing?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, better get that looked at. We got that checked out then. But anyway, so let's take a step back a little bit, okay? Where we left you a few weeks ago at the Battle of Chickamauga. So Longstreet pushes back Thomas, pushes back Rosecrans through Chickamauga, back over the river into the city of Chattanooga. And so they stay there for a little while. They really go to build the defenses. And so what you have is William Rosecrans. He's going to build a 3-mile line within the city using the Union Works, Fort Negley, and Fort Wood. He's going to use the Confederate breastworks, for lack of a better phrase. He's going to pretty much move in. He's going to hermit crab the breastworks. Is what he's going to do. What unfortunately his biggest issue is, and this is the biggest theme for this first half of this Chattanooga thing, is the supplies are screwed up right off the bat. So he puts himself into a corner where he's got very, very, very limited supplies. And more importantly, he has no real supply line. And we'll talk more in details. He's got the one supply line that comes through Walden's Ridge, which is about 60 miles away.
And it's fucking tough to get to.
Well, that's the thing. It's a very misleading thing. It says Walden's Ridge. You'd think of Cemetery Ridge. This is a friggin' mountain.
Yeah.
Right? This is a gigantic with shitty roads. Anybody who's driven to Boston thinks Store Road Drive on a Friday. That's pretty much what this is. Exactly. You know, the Eskimos and the
well, they sent Montgomery Meigs. How do you say his name? Because Meigs. Okay, good. He ends up going down there to check on how things are going at one point, and he's got to go over Walden's Ridge to get there, obviously, because that's the only way you can get into Chattanooga. And he said, I had no conception when I left Washington. I never traveled on such roads.
It's just a shit. Go through the mountains, real tough roads. You know, Rosecrans is still struggling with the loss of Chickamauga. You had that fantastic quote from Lincoln where he says he was confused and stunned like a duck hit on the head. A great quote. Great, you know. He was still having an issue with it. He's sitting there in Chattanooga now, and he's obviously dazed and confused. Who knows what's going on? But his rations are low. He's having horses die, mules die. These soldiers are down to basically a couple of pieces of bread and like a quarter pound of pork every 3 days.
Yeah, they're on quarter rations by one point.
And name it all, the guy in charge of the Confederate cavalry, Joseph Wheeler, he's out there wreaking havoc. He destroys 800 wagons, burns them. You know, the food, the supplies, Avon catalogs, everything's gone. So now Lincoln is sitting in D.C. Now he's, oh shit. Now he knows he has to relieve Chattanooga. This isn't going to work. He orders Stanton, go get Joe Hooker, get his 20,000 men, get him to Chattanooga quick.
They were sitting in Lincoln's cabinet, and Stanton is like, I can get those men there in 5 days. So he's going to send Hooker with my boy Howard's 11th Corps. Yep. And Slocum's 12th Corps. They're going to go by train to Chattanooga.
Wait, hold on. The Chattanooga choo-choo?
Yeah. Actually, the one brewery that we're going to go to in Chattanooga, it's right next to where the Chattanooga Choo Choo is.
Is that the Chattanooga Choo Choo? There's a song you won't get stuck out of your head. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. I love Glenn Miller, but thanks. Stanton says I can get these men there in 5 days, and Halleck is like, fuck that, it's going to take 40. What is he, Moses going through the fucking desert?
Oh, he's a government employee. Of course he's going to take a long time.
Well, hey. It's not Moses.
No, not a Canadian government employee. Come on. I don't want to piss you off, okay? Piss off all those DQ employees in kindergarten going to be mad at me now if I make fun of them. So
Hooker and the 11th and 12th Corps, they end up getting to Chattanooga in 7 days. So Stanton, I mean, this is one area where Stanton was like, he does deliver. I mean, it's not the 5 days, but it's not the 40 that Halleck was saying it was going to be.
No, but if you're Joe Hooker, I think at that point, this is a few months after, Chancellorsville, got fired. I think I would probably do it too.
Same with Howard. Howard's probably like,
yeah.
I got to redeem myself.
He was reading the Twitter and found out people were pissed at him about Chancellorsville. And said, I better get over there. That's what Howard was doing.
Fuckers think I retreat.
But you know who else gets called to Chattanooga?
Sherman.
No. Yes, but who else?
Burnside does too.
Hitting all the, who else is coming?
Besides?
Grant. Hey, look at that. You got it. So Grant gets called there as well. And what's going to basically happen is Grant's going to come in. He's going to be made the military commander of the Military Division of Mississippi, for lack of a better phrase. He's in charge of the West, but that's the official phrase for him. Grant shows up there on September 29th, tells Thomas what's the deal. Thomas has that great quote, "I will hold this town until I starve." Mm-hmm. So he was a big guy, so it'll probably take a little while, probably realistically.
But there's the story of when Grant was on the train, though, and he's handed those two letters, right? Mm-hmm. And one is to keep Rosecrans in charge of the Army of the Cumberland, and the other is to put Thomas in charge of the Army in the Cumberland. Therefore, Rosecrans is no longer going to be in charge anymore. It's Grant that makes that decision. Although I think in his memoirs, Grant might say like, "No, I didn't do it. Stanton did it." It's like,
yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, and the two of them, I don't think Stanton or Grant wanted to make the decision.
Well, I mean, if you make a mistake, you're basically gone. That's how it was that era.
Yeah.
But there's perception. This is the perception that Grant perpetrates was that Rosecrans was happy sitting in the city. Wasn't going to do anything. And then it switched to Rosecrans was going to leave, and it was all messed up. Rosecrans actually, with William Baldy Smith, came up with a plan for the supply line. It'll come out later on. Before that happens, Grant gets there, and what does he do? Gets rid of him.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
He does.
Yeah, he picks the letter that is basically Rosecrans has to resign. Well, I shouldn't say resign, but he's gone. So Thomas is in charge of the Army of the Cumberland at this point. But then Grant and Rosecrans have what probably is a fucking awkward meeting on the train.
Yeah.
The two of them didn't like each other that much at all. But that's where Grant finds out what Rosecrans' plan was, that he actually had a plan to open the supply line that, as you said, he had planned with who was the engineer for the Army of the Cumberland, which was William Baldy Smith. They had it all planned out what they were going to do. Now, there was one point where Rosecrans did send a wire to Washington that said, "I don't know how much longer we can hold this." And that's what started making them paranoid. But
it said it's 6 days of rations.
Yeah, but he never, like he said, "I don't know how much longer we can hold 6 days of rations." He never said he was going to leave, but I think the administration thought, shit, this guy's going to leave. But Rosecrans told Grant, "I was never going to leave. I just need to figure out how to open up the cracker line."
Yeah, and the cracker line we'll talk about here in a little bit, but they're going to get rid of Rosecrans at the end of the day. They're going to move him out. U.S. Grant, he's got a habit of basically getting rid of people he sees as rivals, right? I mean, he just does. But what's interesting about the Grant-Rosecrans thing was clearly personal. It was clearly personal. People don't realize that Grant and Rosecrans were actually good friends back at West Point. There's that fantastic story where when they were both in school, the cadets pulled that prank on Grant, and they made him guard overnight a water pump. You got to guard this for the whole night. Oh, fuck. And Rosecrans was a cadet officer on duty. He comes up to him and says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "They told me I have to guard this." He goes, "Fuck that, go to bed. You just go to bed." Just they're fuck with you, go to bed. That began a strong friendship between those two. You fast forward down to 1862 at Pittsburgh Landing, when Grant spoke of Rosecrans, he was a warm personal friend, one of the most ablest and purest of men, both in motive and action. That's the quote that Grant used to describe Rosecrans. They were boys. I mean, they were great friends. John Rawlins had said, and this is according to Rawlins, he says Grant told him that the only two officers he would ever serve under would be Sherman and Rosecrans. This is how close they were at this time. Okay, so this is high praise, and this is going back and forth. It all goes south in the fall of 1862 at the Battle of Iuka, and they're going to attack Sterling Price and about 12,000 rebels. Grant has Edward Ord, and he has Rosecrans. Those are his two guys. They're going to attack. Something happens, and it gets all fucked up, where Grant allegedly changes the battle plan, but doesn't tell Ord or Rosecrans. So they're both walking off. Ultimately, what happens is they're waiting The Confederates leave Iuka on their own. They just retreat. Whatever, we're out of here. They left. But Rosecrans, he wrote in his official report that he went 36 hours, didn't hear a word from Grant. No, one word. 36 hours.
Oh my God.
That's 3 days here in America. I don't know how it is up there. That's a long time.
You have to factor in the exchange rate on the money for that.
It's probably like 2.5 days.
Yeah.
So basically, Rosecrans writes, he says, where in the name of God is Grant? They can't find Grant. There's no report. They can't find him. You know what they think he was doing?
Yeah.
Right? They think he was throwing back a little grandpa's old cough medicine.
Yeah.
That's what they think he was doing. So the operation fails. Grant takes no ownership of it. Doesn't at all. He basically just says, at the end of the day, Iuka was taken. There was no real battle. It was just taken by it. But then what happens, the reports come out that Grant was drunk and he was blacked out for 3 days. Okay. The report comes from a reporter by the name of William Bickham from the Cincinnati Enquirer. So right off the bat, nothing good comes from Ohio. We know that, right?
Grant's from Ohio. So is Sherman.
Okay. Well, see, this is where we're going with this, right? So Bickham has a source that says that basically he was drunk the whole time.
Wow.
This gets put in the newspaper. Everyone assumes the source is who? Rosecrans.
Mm-hmm.
Because Rosecrans, guess what? Is buddies with this guy Bickham.
Wow.
So he writes the story. Rollins has this quote, and he says, "I hope for his honor that he is not party to this hellish attempt to besmirch General Grant, but the evidence is such that he must be privy to the whole devilish scheme." So now Rollins is saying, yeah, it had to have been Rosecrans. And then now what happens is the relationship goes really south really quick. And then Sherman, because they're close with Grant, Sherman basically has a quote. He says, "Rosecrans would sacrifice his brother if he stood in the way of his popular renown." So that's the stuff that is in the background with Grant and Rosecrans.
Which is good to know for this.
Who knows? Rosecrans is probably an opportunist. There's no question about it. But if you're Grant and this is going on and you've got a chance to whack this guy for what he did, you're going to do it.
Oh, absolutely. And Grant's got his own agenda by this point. He's going to Chattanooga and he wants to, in his head, he's got that he wants Sherman. He already knows he's going to bring Sherman down. He wants Sherman to have this victory. The victory can be on him and the two of them can have it. I mean, I love Grant, but I think what we're going to see in these episodes that we do about Chattanooga is that Grant is not a complete angel. He's a bit of a dick.
No, he definitely does. I mean, Grant gets there. First thing he does is his priority is opening the supply line.
Yep.
Has to be done. It's got to be done, right?
Absolutely should be.
And so he takes the plan that Baldy Smith and Rosecrans come up with and basically takes it and approves it.
Yep.
This is the famous cracker line plan. So we'll talk more about that. But before we do, let's flip the coin and see what old Braxton's doing.
So Braxton Bragg. We all know there's some drama with this. And this is what I like. I sometimes refer to this as being like, it's like Dallas. Like it's that level of fucking stupid
two Dallas
drama.
References today. You mean the Cowboys, you mean the TV show? They're both messes.
The TV show, which is one of my favorite TV shows. The old Dallas too. I love JR and Sue Ellen.
And this trip to the early 80s is brought to you by the Civil War Breakfast Club.
After Chattanooga, like immediately afterwards, Bragg does have a chance. There is a window that he has that he could overtake Rosecrans and the Union Army, even though they are entrenched around Chattanooga. He doesn't do it. He's getting reports from his cavalry, Wheeler and Forrest at the time. Forrest is telling him we could do this, but he doesn't do it. So this begins basically, I would liken it to a kind of figurative Godfather purging of people
Don't go against the family business, Mary.
Yeah, well, guess what? Bragg is about to do a huge purge.
He certainly is.
It begins on September 30th, actually. So we're talking about 10 days after Chickamauga's happened. Bragg has this sort of quote unquote victory, but it's not really a victory because he hasn't driven. Rosecrans is just sitting there. He has not won the city. He's not taken it back. And that's what he's supposed to do. Bragg does not like Nathan Bedford Forrest, but I mean, who does? I don't. I think many people do. Bragg just doesn't like him because he thinks he's wandering around the countryside being the Jeb Stuart of the West, whatever. He's being a complete diva. So he takes some of his men from him and he also puts Wheeler in charge. And Forrest gets wind of this on September 30th and he's pissed. So he walks into Bragg's tent and he tears into him. And I had wanted to take what he said to him and try and put it in modern terminology. But I think when you hear it, you'll agree that it is best left in what he said to him on September 30th, 1863. This is what Forrest says. I have withstood your meanness as long as I intend. You have played the part of a damned scoundrel, and you are a coward. And if you were any part of a man, I would slap your jaws and force you to resent it. You may as well not issue any more orders for me, for I will not obey them. And I will hold you personally responsible for any further indignities you endeavor to inflict upon me. If you ever again try to interfere with me or cross my path, it will be at the peril of your life. That is the ultimate fuck you, SMD, don't mess with me ever again.
It is kind of funny to hear Nathan Bedford Forrest say, "You were mean to me."
I withstood your meanness long enough.
Hope he didn't hit him with a pillow fight. Oh, okay. Anyway, no, I'll just show myself out.
But just the fact he's throwing in this, like, if you're any part of a man. So I don't see you as being a man. Like, it's kind of the ultimate insult you can throw at anybody. And after that, you don't hear much about Forrest in this campaign because Bragg's like, whatever. Bragg just sees him as being gone, doesn't have to deal with him. And that's setting the tone for what's going to happen. But yeah, I definitely wanted to start off with that one.
That's a good one. I mean, and Bragg, I mean, he has problems with so many people throughout this. You mentioned the Purge. I mean, this is a guy. He fires Thomas Hardiman blames him for the failures at Chickamauga.
Yep, he's arresting Polk.
Yeah, fires Leonidas Polk, sends him off to Atlanta of all places. He sends him to Atlanta.
Well, he arrests Polk, and then after the Purge happens, that's when he gets sent to Mississippi and then to Atlanta. But Hardy is gone by this point because he can't stand being around Bragg.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very common thing. I mean, fast forward to a couple of days later, October 4th, right? You've got 12 Confederate generals. They petition Jefferson Davis to get Bragg the F out of here. Yeah, and this is led by D.H. Hill and Simon Buckner. Yeah, he says you need to remove this guy. This guy needs to go in the corner, and okay.
Yeah, go fuck himself. And exactly. Longstreet signatures on there. I think Breckinridge's is. Yeah, as well as Claiborne's. Now, one thing I read about Claiborne is the reason he signed it is because his men were so short on rations. And he couldn't stand to see them suffering. They're eating an ear of corn a day. That's why he did it. And also too, like Claiborne, I think, was probably convinced by a few of the other generals who were like, hey, this guy's from Ireland. He doesn't understand the politics. Let's just tell him to sign this shit, right? Because Claiborne wasn't fully understanding what was going on.
Yeah, sign here, you get a free box of Lucky Charms. Yeah. There you go. Oh, give me that pen right now.
But yeah, the point is like there's this petition that goes out. Jeff Davis ends up coming to Chattanooga to have a little bit of a team building exercise.
He's in Richmond, we assume, going to this, and he sees what's going on, and he gets this letter. He's like, you gotta be shitting me. Yeah. So he actually goes all the way to Chattanooga to go meet with these guys. And he sits and personally hears their complaints, every single one of them. And you know what he does after all that?
He pats Bragg on the head and says, "It's okay."
He does nothing. He lets him deal with it. He lets Bragg retaliate against D.H. Hill and Simon Buckner. Yeah. He sits there and says, "Well, you know what? You're still my guy." Do you know how pissed off that must have made those other guys and how embarrassed they must have been?
Okay. So after this meeting, General St. John Liddell, who did not have a high opinion of Bragg at all, he goes to Bragg and tells him, "Dude, you need to calm down." So think of that Taylor Swift song. That is the theme song of what is going on in the Army of Tennessee. You know the one I'm talking about?
Thank God, no.
You need to calm down. You're being too loud.
Oh, yeah. God, jeez, forgot about that.
Are you
I'm
okay?
Sorry. I knew you were going to sing on this. I knew it was a matter of time. I just met you.
No. Basically tells Bragg to stop the drama, and Bragg is having none of that. He turns to Liddell and says, "I want to get rid of such generals. Let them send in their resignations. I shall accept every one without hesitation." Except he doesn't get them. So this is when he starts to do his basically passive aggressive figurative Godfather purge. So Hindman and Polk are gone. Polk's going to Mississippi, eventually to Atlanta, where he meets a bad end with some artillery. In a few months. Hardy comes back. D.H. Hill ends up going to North Carolina. Bragg takes some other men, like someone like Walker, and he elevates them. And then others, he disperses their commands, he demotes them and everything else. He does all this underhanded stuff because he's just like, whatever the fuck. Like he's at war more with his commanders than he is with the Union Army right now.
And we'll find out as this goes on how little respect these guys had for him. So when it's all said and done, he's left with the Army of Tennessee. He's got James Longstreet, who's got Lafayette McLaws, and Minka Jenkins, who's replacing John Bell Hood, who's still on the disabled list.
He's on the DL.
William Hardee, he's got John Jackson, who's replacing Benjamin Cheatham. Patton Anderson, he's got the great States Rats Gist.
States Rats.
Right. And then, of course, the other Army's got John Breckinridge. So he's got Patrick Claiborne, Alex Stewart, Carter Stevenson, and William Bates. At the end of the day, he's got about 50,000 guys. Grant's army is coming piecemeal. Sherman's still not there yet. But when he gets there, he's going to have Sherman, who's going to come with the 15th Corps with Frank Blair. He's going to have the 17th. It's the second division, the 17th.
Yep.
He's going to have Joseph Hooker, who's going to come, part of the Army of the Cumberland. He's going to have OO, the 11th Corps, Howard. He's going to have the 12th Corps with John, 2nd Division with John Geary. He's going to be under Hooker. We'll hear about him here in a little while. Army of the Cumberland with your boy George the Rock Thomas. Yeah. You know what the Rock is cooking. 4th Corps with Gordon Granger. 14th Corps with John Palmer. And then, of course, he's got a total of about 72,000 guys. Big Union Army, big armies coming to the dance floor. They're slowly getting there. So Hooker, he's going to be the next one who's going to show up. The Sherman's going to be off in a little while. We'll hear about him in a little while. Yeah. So Hooker shows up. He's got the 11th Corps under Oliver Otis Howard. Have you heard of him? Oliver Otis Howard?
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Might be my favorite boy.
Yeah, he's a New England guy. Is he from Maine?
Yeah. So one of my favorite New Englanders.
Yeah, okay, well, it's good, Obviously, Tom Brady's the other one. We talked about that. But Oliver Otis Howard, he's going to guard the railroad station from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to Bridgeport, Alabama, which is going to be the road, the genesis of their supplies. So Bridgeport, Alabama is really important. 12th Corps under Slocum. He's going to be going to the Lookout Valley, along with John Geary, which is going to be very important when we talk a little bit later about some of the small battles that are going to be coming up down the road. So that's pretty much what's going on with that. Certainly weather did slow Hooker. He finally made it, but we talked about the conditions, the roads. He finally gets there. He basically is going to take him and he's going to work on this plan, this supply plan. So he's going to move him to Browns Ferry. Even though he's not even there yet, he's going to start moving his guys there. And we're going to talk about the Browns Ferry here in detail in a little bit. But basically what this is, he's going to send Brigadier General William Hazen and Brigadier General John Turchin to basically help open up this line. So, and it's a fascinating story. It really, really is at Browns Ford. So basically, I've not been to Chickamauga, but I've seen it. I've seen pictures. Okay, so I could. No, if you're standing on Lookout Mountain, Browns Ford is the Tennessee River on the left-hand side. So you go all the way to the left. It's really what's going to connect them to their supply line. They have to have it, and you're going to have some people guarding it. You're going to have William C. Oates from the 15th Alabama. Is going to be guarding it.
Fame.
Yeah, so
later governor of Alabama.
From Pike County, Alabama. Yeah, that's where he's from. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So they have to open up the Browns Ford. So fast forward now to October 27th, 1863. They're going to open this thing. They're going to call it the Cracker Line. Okay, they must have crackers. Yeah. Okay, so they got to open the supply line for the Army because it's on the verge of starvation. So basically, they're going to go to a place called Ross's Landing, which is an old Indian name before the Cherokee got kicked out of Chattanooga. That's where it was. That's where it was, unfortunately. A little bit of a history there. General William Hazen, another New Englander, Mary. He's from Vermont. Big Ben and Jerry's guy. Yep. From Vermont, okay. They're basically going to be tasked to get there and help these things. So they're going to get 50 pontoon boats. Again, the pontoons. We keep hearing about pontoons. Yeah. In 2 big barges. They're going to take 1,400 Union soldiers and a bunch of supplies at midnight. They're going to put them on the boats, and they're going to put them down to Browns Ferry, which is a little landing spot.
And that's Hazen's men that are going.
This is Hazen's, right.
Hazen's are going down there in the pontoon. Yep.
Right. Turchin's going to show up in a little while.
Overland across Moccasin Point.
Yep. So they leave at 3 o'clock in the morning. So they're on their way. They use the darkness. They use the fog to mask them. They're basically floating down the river right under the rebel cannons on Lookout Mountain. So this, you can call hyperbole, you can call it whatever you want. This might be the most important covert action in the entire Civil War, in my opinion.
It is. I was listening to a lecture today about this, and they said this Browns Ferry is what is setting everything off to happen for Lookout Mountain. And the other thing, too, to remember for this is weather is working in the Union Army's favor, much like it did for the New England Patriots the other night. But much like it will.
Nice segue, Mara. Nice segue.
Yeah, but much like it will for the Battle of Lookout Mountain as well, which we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Yep. And so basically it's one of those must-haves for the Union Army. They are starving, they're out of rations, they have nothing to do. They have nowhere to go, so they're stuck. So they're going to basically, with Chattanooga literally hanging in the balance for the Union Army, they're going to make this run. John Churchin, he's going to meet them there. He's going to march his guys overland. They're going to get to a place called Moccasin Bend, which is a bend. Looks like a moccasin. That's why they call it that, which is just on the base of the bottom of Lookout Mountain. He's also going to have about 700 of Hazen's men that couldn't fit on the boats. I guess they couldn't all fit on the boat. So they must have played musical chairs, and whoever's left over had to walk. That's probably what happened exactly. So they all meet there. They get to Brown's Ferry. They're basically ferried across the pontoon boats. Now it's 4 a.m. They're supposed to have some kind of signal fire, and it doesn't happen. It's not a perfect world. But they were able to establish the beachhead at Brown's Ferry. That's the important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're getting them all there. 23rd Kentucky U.S. Infantry basically is on the east side and the west side of Brown's Ferry. And within about an hour, they have this whole beachhead set up. So now they got something set up. Just beyond the beachhead, sleeping, is William C. Oates, who finally stopped running from Little Round Top. So that's where he ended up. Okay.
Yet he claimed that if he could have taken Little Round Top, the Army of Northern Virginia would have won Gettysburg and would have won the Civil War.
Oh, there's no question. Absolute slam dunk. No lost cause there at all, but absolutely what happened. So they literally catch them sleeping, the 15th Alabama. So he's, to your point, he's a future governor of Alabama. Interesting guy, William C. Oates.
Yeah, he is.
Do you know what this is going off the track a little bit about him, but he grew up in the countryside in Pike, Alabama, and he learned to read, became a lawyer. Something happens where he was working at his father's pub one day, and he beat this guy upside the head with a stick and thought he killed him. So he left town. He ended up down in Texas, of all places, and he got either gambling or drinking. He got in a fight with some local gun dealer or some. And he was going to get up at dawn, okay, corral shootout, like Biff Tannen, right? On it, he really was. Apparently, the night before this duel, somebody got down to him and said, the guy you hit didn't die. You're not wanted for anything. You can get back. And so he came back, which is probably pretty good because the guy he was going to fight was like a really good, I don't know what the phrase is, like an Aaron Burr type situation. So he might have got killed that next morning. So he finally gets back, forms a local militia, and ended up climbing through the ranks of the 15th Alabama. He ended up becoming a lawyer and the governor, but that's his whole story. So there you go. So basically, he ends up, again, having a tough time with this. Oates hears Hazen's men arriving. He's got like a couple hundred people. He's got 300 people against 1,400 now of Hazen's guys. So I'll let you do the math on that one, but it doesn't end too well. There's a really cool story where, because it was really early, they couldn't see. He didn't want the Hazen's guys to see the barrel flashes. Yeah. So he would tell them, do not shoot until you put the barrel right against the stomach of the guys.
I heard that today in a lecture, and it was like, holy fuck, the hell.
So he would wait. It reminded me a lot. You know what it reminded me a lot of was the Iron Brigade at Herbst Woods in Gettysburg.
Yeah.
They said, right, same deal, but not to the stuff. They would stick the gun right in your belly and then shoot because they didn't want to see the flash, the muzzle. The good news is it didn't work too bad because it didn't really matter. Oates himself gets shot in the thigh. He gets hurt and ends up 15th Alabama does fall back. Hazen's men does strengthen and does open the supply line. So they finally open up the cracker line right there. In my opinion, just my opinion, probably right, but still my opinion, okay, the second they open up the cracker line, the battle's over.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
Right. Everything from that point is a waste of time because once the supply line was open, the Union was not losing that battle.
Well, this is like Brown's Ferry. I say, it's not only a victory for the Union with opening the supply line, but it's where Braxton Bragg, he realizes how truly fucked he is because the Union goes from a quarter ration to a third to a half to 2/3 to full very quickly. They get back up to where they need to be. And even though they call it the cracker line after hardtack, and even though it's the hardtack, they've never been more happy to have that. But not only that, they can finally start feeding their animals again too. Because when Grant arrives in Chattanooga, he sees all these dying mules and horses. And that's when he realizes that something needs to be done really, really quickly. So they can start not only feeding the men, but they can start feeding the horses, which are, they went from
feast to famine. I mean, there was an ice cream truck they had. Imagine the guy chasing the ice cream truck. They must have been so happy seeing that. They had a chocolate fountain spraying. They had everything. They had more food than they knew what to do with that. This cracker line opened up. So Bragg and Longstreet, now they're like, well, this whole thing is a mess now. So they end up meeting up at a place called Sunset Rock. They're going to discuss their next move, and they have to decide what they're going to do. It's going to lead to the next phase, what's called the Wahachi plan, the Wahachi. So that's
which is a night battle.
It's a night battle. We'll talk about that. The Union's got the initiative now. They got the supply line. Now they've got a beachhead. They're in a place now where they have where Moccasin Bend is. They have cannons there that they can shoot these guys. So there's these great stories about how the Confederates would have to run across between fires or artillery just to get across the fields. They timed it so they wouldn't get hit. Yeah. It's kind of like the sprinkler when you're in the front backyard trying to run around. And so it's all the initiative now in the strength is on the Union. So Wahachi comes at this phase of the battle, the pre-Lookout Mountain phase of the battle. This is the part that is really their last shot to try to push them back.
Yeah, and this meeting between Longstreet and Bragg is really, really tense. This is where Liddell comes in again because he recorded what it was like being there. And actually, E.P. Alexander was there as well.
He must have brought his balls.
He did. But anyway, Liddell was there, and he said that Bragg was not at all happy with Longstreet because at Brown's Ferry, Bragg had no idea what was happening, but he was aware of Hooker being at Bridgeport, and he had ordered Longstreet to move additional units into Lookout Valley to cover that shit, and Longstreet ignored it. So Bragg is going up there to meet with Longstreet about what to do next, but also to chew a strip off him as well. So finally, Longstreet's like, well, I could just attack at night. And Bragg's like, well, fine, fucking do it then.
Yeah, so he's going to attack at night. This is 2 days after Brown's Ferry. So now it's the 29th, right? 10/29/1860.
Yeah, 28th is when it happens.
28th. Okay, right around there. Well, I guess at midnight the 29th. So there, okay.
Yeah. So that's why I said 28th, 29th.
We'll just move on.
Fucker.
Wow. It's not even alive and you hit me with that. It's impressive. Venture. Yeah. Anyway, so what? I mean, can we talk about Wahachi now?
We can.
Practice all day to say this thing correctly. Okay. So this couple days after Brown's Ferry, get to your point, it's going to be a nighttime effort to get them off the northern end of where they are.
Yeah.
So you're going to have Law, okay, our friend from Gettysburg again, okay, and you're going to have Micah Jenkins, who we mentioned before, is the one who replaced John Bell Hood. But Jenkins isn't even there. It's going to be a guy named John Bratton who's going to be commanding. So a bunch of South Carolinian guys, and what they're going to basically do is they're going to take their two divisions, they're going to cross over the northern tip of Lookout Mountain, they're going to cross Lookout Creek. They're going to have 3 total brigades. They're going to be kind of kept in reserve here. So you're talking about Rock Benning, Georgian, right? Yep. Jerome Robertson, Texans, who, again, guys from like the 1st Texas, and those guys from Gettysburg again. And you're going to have Law's old brigade of Alabamans, okay? They're going to stay in the hills. What they're going to do is they're going to attack with Bratton. They're going to attack with 1 brigade, and they're going to leave these 3, ideally, to catch them, the Union, when they're escaping.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they did 3 and 1, but it actually almost worked. So Bratton's going to move just north of the Wahachi Pike. Where this place is going to be is where John Geary's going to be. So John Geary's got a small little group, mostly Pennsylvania guys, some New York guys, but he's got 4 guns. They're on a ridge, okay? Now, what's interesting about this is they're warned by a local woman that the Rebs are going to attack that night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how the hell she knew. The ironic thing about that is her house ended up getting taken down and used for firewood after the battle. And so they took her house down. So no good deed goes unpunished, I guess, right? So she warns them there's going to be a night attack from this woman. So the troops are going to sleep on their arms. They're going to be ready to go. 29th Pennsylvania has their pickets. They set up around a full circle around Geary's men. You can see me doing the circle. So you know it's legit. A guy named Colonel Rickards is going to be the guy, and right around midnight or so, the pickets start to fire. You start to get a pop of the guns. So it's like the Rebs are about to attack. So Brad and South Carolinians attack. They move out in this open field, and it's midnight. It's late. It's dark. The street lights are off. So you can't see
anything. To go home.
It's time to go home. You're like, oh, come on, kids, lights are. The only light they see again are these muzzle flashes. So again, it's another example of night fighting in the Civil War. It's the second time we've seen this now, or early morning, late night.
In this area, too.
Right, exactly. First, South Carolina, they start to take heavy casualties. They realize they're completely unsupported. So right off the bat, this thing's not working out. The timing's not right.
Mm-hmm.
They have another group called the Palmetto Sharpshooters. They're supposed to probe the right of Geary's line, and they're late. Hampton's Legion, supposed to extend the 5th South Carolina line, and they're late. Basically, you're left with the 2nd South Carolina finding the left of Geary's line. And what they do is they ultimately find, this story we talked about before we started, they find all the wagons.
Yeah.
And the wagons are unattached to the animals.
Yeah.
So all the mules and all the animals are unattached. They're just hanging around. All of a sudden, the 2nd South Carolina invades them, charges them. And what happens?
There's a stampede.
Stampede
by these mules. And there's a rumor that goes around the Union camps afterwards that this made the rebels believe that they were being attacked by cavalry. And there was a poem written about it, about these mules. But it was also said that they were breveted as horses afterwards.
Yeah, it's actually
such an awesome story.
It was, but
so cool.
But all the Teamsters took off. They ran away.
Yeah,
and they ran through the line of the 149th New York, which is one of the guys who, I don't know if he's the one who wrote that poem, but I think someone told him.
Yeah, someone from New York wrote the poem, and it was based off another poem.
Right. I forget how the details that, but it wasn't. The guy who wrote it wasn't actually there. It was someone who told him about it.
Yeah.
It was like there was like the separate. Kevin Bacon degree of separation.
Like the telephone game, you don't know it when it finally gets to you.
You know who else is there? It's 137th New York.
Yep.
Speaking of Gettysburg, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to protect the left side of the line.
Yeah.
Bratton's attack, like many of these attacks, is all disjointed. First, South Carolina withdraws. We mentioned Hampton's Legions and the Palmetto Sharpshooters. They get there staggered late, and that doesn't work out too well. And this is the time of the battle, after a while, like in most battles, you start to see these guys run out of steam. I mean, the fuck this hits at some point. And that's pretty much what happened with these guys. It was right at this time when, remember I mentioned those 4 guns?
Mm-hmm.
This is Knapp's battery, the 4th the Pennsylvania. They're on the ridge, and they're going to start firing. Now, here's the problem. They're on a ridge. In front of them is their own guys. And then beyond them is the fields, this wheat field, this cornfield thing, where the South Carolinians are. So they can't use canister because they're too close. They have to use case shot. And so there's all kinds, so they have to use case shot, they have to use short fuses, and basically you end up with a lot of Pennsylvania guys getting hurt because of the friendly fire. So just picture the things exploding, getting their own guys. That's basically kind of puts a stall to that. Hooker's up the street at Brown's Ferry. He hears what's going on finally. He must have woke up.
Yeah, so that's where the 11th Corps is.
Yeah, I was going to say, who does he send?
He doesn't tell Howard what he's doing. He sends Schurz.
And who else? Von Steinwehr.
Von Steinwehr.
He fresh goes off the ghost tours at Steinwehr Avenue, apparently.
Not Von Schimmelfucker.
No, he is not here today.
No. Howard does eventually get there, though. Hooker finally is like, fine, you can go for some cavalry. Because when he sends Schurz, like, it's an absolute clusterfuck. Like, somebody starts going along the wrong road and all this other stuff. And it's just, but the fact that Hooker goes over Howard, like, he totally does what you're supposed to go to the commander first and say, can I send? And Hooker's just basically like, F that.
But they're going to come, though. They are going to come. But you know what's going to happen? Remember those 3 brigades I mentioned before that were held in reserve? Yeah. There's a place that would later be called Smith and Tyndall Hill. They're going to get them. So you're going to have the 3 brigades left. You're going to have the Alabamans, the Lawsville Brigade, Jerome Robertson's Texans, and Rock Benning's Georgians. They're going to basically be there. They're going to block the 11th from basically arriving. Yeah. So the one thing they did do right was that. Unfortunately, Bratton hears the fighting. Okay, he hears what's going on. He gets a message delivered to him that says, roll them up, we're out of here. Let's go. Yep. They end up withdrawing. They back over Lookout Creek.
To Lookout Mountain is where they end up going.
So they get over there. So it's nighttime. It's turning into dawn. It goes all night long, just like Lionel Richie would say. Brad and South Carolinians lose about 1,500 guys. I mean, out of the 1,500 guys, they lose 300, so they lose quite a bit. Howard's then going to link up with Geary at Browns Ferry and help. And what he's going to do at that point is he's going to help strengthen that line to protect for the future attack. So now you've got a really, really strong Wauhatchie. You have a really strong Browns Ferry. and you really stabilize again that cracker line, and you push them back, and you push the Confederates back, and now really, and like we said before, the battle's over. That shit can at that point. It's done.
Yeah, once the cracker line is open, like you said, you know, it's over. And each of these things, the reason we wanted to talk about them is because they are important stepping stones into what is going to happen. You know, like for instance, like after Wauhatchie, Longstreet is gone. He's headed back east.
Well, you know where he's going first, though, right?
Knoxville.
He's going to Knoxville. Remember what's going on in Knoxville, right?
Burnside.
So Burnside, old Ambrose Burnside is up there, and he's going to basically defend a rail line. It's going to be a problem for the Confederates because it's going to affect their supply line. What Bragg wants to do, he's going to send Longstreet, who he hates, and it's addition by subtraction. And Longstreet's like, yes. But Jefferson Davis wants him back in Virginia. So he's like, why don't you, Knoxville's on the way. While you're there, why don't you stop by, beat Burnside, then come back. We'll have a good time. So he's going to go back there. And that's going to create another issue that's going to help ultimately set up Lookout Mountain.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. What's
going to happen is Bragg now concerned about this Burnside situation.
Yeah.
He's going to send Longstreet. So now he's like, well, I better send Cleburne. I better send Buckner now too.
Yeah, and that's what he does. And that's that's another thing that is starting to lead to Lookout Mountain. And this is what leads to Orchard Knob, which is November the 23rd.
What do you call me? Anyway, so he's going to, so Cleburne and Buckner are going to be around. That's 11,000 guys. Now just run the math here. They started with 50,000 guys.
Yeah.
They're purging guys, not just because of casualties, but they're sending people away. He's going to send 11,000 of Cleburne and Buckner's guys out. Now Grant's like, what the hell's going on now?
They see them marching away, and he's like, what the fuck is he doing now?
He's Longstreet go. And now he sees Cleburne go. Now he sees Buckner go. He's like, all right, something's afoot at the Circle K.
So General Thomas orders General Thomas J. Wood, who, if you'll remember from our episodes about Chickamauga, he's the guy that got that unfortunate order to fucking move his division, which caused the breakthrough, which Longstreet went through, which is odd that he's now trying to get back at Longstreet. So he orders Wood to go do some reconnaissance work. And their objective is going to be this spot called Orchard Knob. So what happens here is Wood gets up there. Sheridan is going to protect Wood's flank, and Howard's 11th Corps, my boy OO again, makes an appearance. He extends the line to the left. So there's 20,000 Union soldiers up here. And around 1:30 p.m., 14,000 of them are just going to move forward and stun 600 rebels and drive them away. And Orchard Knob becomes the headquarters for Grant and Thomas for the remainder of the battles for Chattanooga. Bragg all of a sudden changes his strategy, and as Cleburne is getting his men on the train, he gets a message that says, dude, you need to come back. Get back on Missionary Ridge.
Anybody within 1 day's march, get your ass back.
Cleburne is probably like, fuck.
Cleburne's on the train going, fuck Jesus, I guess so he's got to get back. So now everything's kind of moving in flux again. So now everyone's coming back. So they're coming, they're going. Again, it shows that whole miscommunication thing. But what's interesting about Orchard Knob, and this is one thing that's kind of funny, is it starts off with a reconnaissance. So Thomas Wood does his reconnaissance.
Yeah.
They view the Rebs about 2,000 yards away. Now he's going to bring Sheridan up to Wood's right flank. And then he's going to have Howard extend the left. So like you mentioned a few minutes ago, they got 20,000 guys there.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, obviously it turns in from a reconnaissance mission more to a disruption mission now.
Yeah, you need to get the fuck off of this area because we're taking it and we have more men than you. So this is the 23rd of November. So at 1:30 p.m., there are 14,000 are going to attack the Rebs, and they're going to hold the ground. And ironically, it's that ground where they attack is going to become Grant and Thomas's headquarters during the battle too, right? They end up moving. He moves William T. Walker from Lookout Mountain to Missionary Ridge. And all this time, they still don't know what Sherman's doing. Bragg doesn't know if Sherman's going to Knoxville. Bragg's pretty convinced he is going to Knoxville, but instead, right? Yeah, Sherman's in Chattanooga at that point, but they just don't know where he's going.
They just don't, so they don't know where he's going.
He and Grant have a plan to where he's going to be going on the 24th.
Right, but Bragg, doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know. He doesn't know where Sherman's going. He still thinks he's probably going to Knoxville, but now they don't know. So Bragg's going to move. He's going to take Hardin. He's going to command the right flank. He's going to have Carter Stevenson on the left flank, and Breckinridge is going to be on the center. And then you know what happens? The Union plan changes again because of another freak in nature, which is going to change the whole battle, right?
Yep, it does.
Which is when Sherman is basically going to be coming back. One of his guys is Osterhaus's division. Yep. The boats break, the pontoons break, and they get stuck it's like Ebenezer Creek, sort of. Most of the army is on one side of the river. Osterhaus can't get across. Now he's stuck there. So Grant decides, well, I'm going to take your troops. I'm going to take you from Sherman. I'm going to put you with Hooker now. Mm-hmm. And Hooker is going to YOLO it and say, I'm going to go up Lookout Mountain.
Yeah, he is. And what happens is Hooker has been initially told by Grant, to do a demonstration around Lookout Mountain in an attempt to start to drive the rebels off there, to maybe scare them off, because Stevenson doesn't have that many men up there. But Hooker also doesn't have the men to do a full-on battle. Now, in Grant's original order, he does say basically the whole, if practicable, you can do the demonstration. Hooker wants to do a demonstration. You have to keep in mind, like, Hooker's finally come out of his concussion that he was in, and he's wanting to redeem himself from what has happened at Chancellorsville. Mm-hmm. There's two people at this battle that are wanting to do that, Hooker and Howard. Mm-hmm. So with what happens with Osterhaus, that gives Hooker enough men to be able to do a full-on battle. And that's when that happens, when Osterhaus is given the order to go join Hooker's men, that's when Thomas tells Hooker, the general commanding, meaning General Grant, directs that you endeavor to take the point of Lookout Mountain. Mm-hmm. And that's all Hooker needs.
Yeah, all because Osterhaus, the boat sank. We are going to talk obviously more about Lookout Mountain in part 2 of this extravaganza, but it just goes to show again how fate can change anything, right? Yep. How the fact that Chattanooga is very foggy is going to help them to take Browns Ferry, right? It's going to help Hazen's guys. It's going to mask them. The fact that the whole point of the beginning part of the battle was getting pontoon boats to get supplies, and they were benefited by the pontoon boats break. You want to go to a casino with anybody, you want to go with these guys at Chattanooga.
Osterhaus.
You want to take Osterhaus, okay? Because you'll win the house with Osterhaus. What's in there?
I'd be taking Osterhaus and Hooker, because then I'm guaranteed a good time.
Oh, gee, well, there you go, right? I'll just stay home and hang out. You have a good time. But but basically, it's just one of those things where, again, anything that came after Browns Ferry is complete window dressing, because that was it.
Yeah, and Browns Ferry was what set it all off to happen.
It did, because once they got it armed and once they got the supplies, it was done. Should Bragg have taken off at that point? Yeah, hindsight being your benefactor, certainly.
Yeah.
I think he knew the writing was on the wall, because he really had to, Bragg, going back to Bragg, he only had two choices. He could either frontal attack or he could siege. He chose siege, which is probably the right call at the time.
It was half-assed, though.
Right.
He's not sieging them. He's not sieging them in the same way Grant did. He's not bombing the shit out of them, and they're not using the wallpaper for newsprint.
No, I think part of it, though, is I don't think that Bragg wanted to bomb one of his own cities. I think that was part of it. Mm-hmm. I also think that he saw those mountains and realized that if I can have Wheeler and I can just terrorize the one road, they're not going to get their supplies. Mm-hmm. I think the whole thing changed when they were able to push off the 15th Alabama and Oates' guys off of Browns Ferry, because that changed the whole thing. No. And at that point, it wasn't a siege anymore. Now it was a battle. You're still outnumbered. You're still about 20,000 guys, you're outnumbered. And now you're still sending your guys off on a fun run still. They're also all over the place. They're all spread out. You got Breckinridge, who was pissed that he was in his location. He didn't like that at all. Mm-hmm. Stevenson's mad because he's on Lookout Mountain. He hated that location because it was vulnerable. You have this constant infighting. And then throughout the entire thing is Longstreet, mm-hmm. who is ignoring half the orders, right? And what's funny about Longstreet here isn't this a pattern with him now at this point?
It is. It's showing a pattern.
You're starting to see a pattern with Longstreet.
He's like, what the hell?
He isn't a general of the army. He's a pissed off temp in the accounting department at this point. Yes. That's who he is, right?
Well, he tells Bragg what to do. He suggests something to Bragg after Chickamauga. He's like, okay, we need to do this. We need to do a whole movement thing. And Bragg is like, no, that's really dumb. And Bragg was right for once.
Yeah.
And Longstreet was just pissed off after that. And then at Browns Ferry, Bragg went to him and was like, okay, I know where Hooker is. Could you move your troops there? And Longstreet is like, nah, I don't think I will.
Oh yeah, but you saw it on the Union side. You see Sheridan. I mean, not Sheridan. You had old Uncle Blingy Sherman, he's ignoring Thomas's orders.
Oh, yeah.
He's up there doing his railroad thing,
And Thomas is like, could you fucking not and get down here?
Get your ass down, we'll see. So there's a lot of that. But I think the moral of the story was Longstreet clearly didn't want to be there. No. I mean, he wanted to get back to Virginia so he can be to Virginia and show Lee he didn't want to be there either. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
But this is twice now, within about a 4-month period where Longstreet again just doesn't listen to orders and he doesn't take any ownership and then he blames people. So what I'm saying is, look, I like Longstreet. I think he's a good general, but there's a pattern with this guy now. I mean, it just is. And so
it's like drama follows him.
And that's the one thing I will say. That's the one thing that Lee didn't have. He didn't have a lot of this publicly anyway. You didn't have people writing a petition to get General Lee removed.
No, well, I mean, if where there's Braxton Bragg, that's why I say it's kind of like Dallas. It's like it's the ultimate, because Dallas brought the ultimate level of drama. Braxton Bragg and the AOT is the ultimate level of drama in the Civil War, especially this.
Like they thought Bragg died and they saw him in the shower at the beginning of next season.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They're like, oh shit, he's back.
And the whole thing was a dream?
Yeah. Have we won? Maybe we've won.
Oh, wow. I guess I could order that quartermaster order now and not turn myself down. But I think the moral of the story is you took a Union army that was led by Rosecrans, who was in some sort of shell, some sort of PTSD situation coming out of Chickamauga. Mm-hmm. Grant comes down. You want to say saves the day because he kind of did take Rosecrans's orders and plan.
And he
took it as his own.
Took credit for them. Yeah, that's shitty.
He did. But again, you know what? It all worked because at the end of the day, we don't want to give away the story because next week we're going to be going back to the second half of Chattanooga.
Yeah.
But there's a pretty good chance it's going to turn out pretty well for the Union at this point. We'll talk more about that later. I think it's a good place to drop off, Mary. We'll leave these guys where they are. We'll leave the Confederates position themselves on Lookout Mountain and on Missionary Ridge, setting up a defensive situation. And we'll leave Joe Hooker getting ready to attack Lookout Mountain, getting ready to redeem himself for Chancellorsville.
Yeah, because he's got Osterhouse now, which I just want to add. So, I mean, I completely agree with you about Browns Ferry. That is the most important thing to happen in this. But the second most important thing is Osterhouse.
Well,
without Osterhouse, you cannot have Lookout Mountain.
No, it would have been, and you wonder how that would have happened, what they would have done.
Yeah,
you have to think Sherman's original plan to attack Missionary Ridge would have been their plan. Mm-hmm. They would have attacked a fortified, strong Confederate position. I mean, it could have been a Cold Harbor all over again. It could have been a slaughter.
Exactly. Yep.
But because the pontoon boat sank and Osterhouse couldn't get across the river, he goes with Hooker, and Hooker really redeems himself. And we'll talk more about some of the things that Grant does that don't redeem him, that don't exactly make himself look good.
We're going to talk about Lookout Mountain in the next episode and what else goes on, and probably obviously Missionary Ridge too. This might end up, as I said, becoming a threesome.
Oh, well, I'm going to leave that. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it could be.
We'll see how that goes. Nothing better than a threesome with old Braxton Bragg. That's for damn sure. Thanks for that. Thanks for that future. That's why we don't call you Nightmare for nothing. That's for sure. But anyway, that's a great place to drop off. So we will watch it now. Look out for the next episode and see if we can make a mountain out of a molehill going into episode 2 of Chattanooga. So what do you think, huh? What do you think?
I think that's a good place to drop off for tonight. So thank you all for listening.
Thanks for all putting up with us. So again, we will have our live. This will drop Saturday morning.
Yep.
And we will have our live on 10 o'clock a.m. on Saturday talking about this and whatever you feel like talking about. We expect to talk about a fantastic roundtable that's going to be happening. So definitely hope you enjoyed that, because it'll be in the past tense when we do this. Yeah. We will get back at this again next Tuesday to talk about the second half or the second portion, depending on how we want to do this. Yeah. But we'll go forward with that. But hey, good talk. Always a lot of fun talking about our old friends back in the Civil War again. So any parting words for you?
No, just thanks everyone for your continued support with this. And we will definitely see you next week for some more of Chattanooga.
We will. Excellent. So we will talk to you all soon.
All right. See you guys later.
Peace out.
Bye.